So I'm going to push these values out a little bit more. This kind of goes back to my original marker values here, which I was using kind of a warm, basically like 5–10% here. Now we were kind of suggesting that the light might be coming from above. So as I'm building these values, I'm thinking about the light coming down. All right, looks pretty good. Now slowly let's build back in the values here. So then next we had the 10%, which I will work here and continue to think a little bit about where these shadow lines might be going. And I'm trying to, again, I'm working with what I had before, but I'm pushing it out a little bit to extend, because I extended the drawing a little bit more here. I need to put a little bit of out here into the fur. Good. It's looking pretty good. I could clean some of this up a little bit later, but for right now, I'm really letting the spontaneity of what I'm doing just kind of roll out. Okay. All right, so we're building up those values a little bit more. It's looking good. A little darker. So I'm going to pull my, sample my gray a little bit more. Now I'm going back in on 20%, so. This is kind of using a quicker 3-value scale, right? Like I'm not going in there and doing careful blending, and I'm blocking it in. So I'm thinking about the major values that are going to help me see the form better. This is a little different than rendering. I mean, we're not into texture yet and the fine details as much as we're just establishing form through the shading. Now, I am including a little bit of kind of shading texture in the way that I'm applying the shadow, but I'm not terribly concerned about the shading at this point. At least I'm sorry, the texture, not the shading. It's just get the values in the right place so that you see the form. And yeah, a little attention to maybe the action that I'm going down with the value, but I'm not super concerned about fine texture. It's just get the values down, maybe with a little bit of directional mark making, which kind of matches the texture a little bit there. Coffee. Okay, before we go any further here. Yeah, definitely, Chris. At this point, we're just getting the dimensional quality. So I'm not into the fine details. Not sure I would go to the fine details for something that is really kind of intended to be more just concept sketch. As long as I can see and feel the idea of what it's going to be, then I'd probably go into something that was more careful rendering, like portrait rendering. So, I'm not going for photorealism here. I'm going for the concept to kind of go along with, what we started here, but flushing it out a little bit more into a little more detail. But again, not necessarily going for something photo representational or anything like that. But we'll see. If things start evolving and I get to the point where I want to put something like that in, I could just keep going, take it further and further and further. But I'm not sure I would ever do that on stream because that takes a lot more time, and I'm not sure I could hang with everybody that long. So, okay. So one thing I'm seeing that's happening here is I have a few lines from the previous drawing, and you can kind of see where I've got a few where the edge of the page stopped there, and I got a few lines that kind of came through in a way that, I'm not feeling super hot about. So I think for me, I'm going to clean a few of those lines up, and that's back on my drawing layer. So let's see. Switch over here, and let's just a few of these lines that kind of don't necessarily make a lot of sense here. And I was noticing when I first came back in here and after not looking at this for a while, that the shoulder kind of lost that sort of cap, the feeling of a muscle that's there. So I think I need to scale back a little bit on a few areas here. Like this needs more highlight, I think, up here. So I'm pushing my values back just a little bit there on the shoulder. I want it to be a little more rounded. I'm not sure about this line either here. Feels a little heavy. I want this to connect a little bit more. Might have to move. So there's these sort of various muscles, but these are hitting too hard. See if that's the right mark. Yeah. So to the deltoids, there's these kind of heads to the deltoid. It actually has a couple of slightly different heads to that deltoid muscle, but I don't necessarily want to bring that level of detail out because first of all, it's furry, so I'm not sure you would really denote that. But I do want the deltoid to actually feel as a whole without being broken up too much. So it's about suggestion of these forms that are underneath. Pectoralis, kind of coming over here from the side. Little indication there. Little dip down. Come out a little more. Okay. More of these textures there. Now I'm getting a little bit into these textures inside here that are going to feel a little bit more like the fur. And at some point, I will have to get in there and do more detail. But right now, I try to stay as loose as possible, as long as possible. So, as much as I can use bigger brushes and don't commit until like I absolutely have to. For one, a couple things happen with that. The longer you sort of push around, the clearer your decision making gets because it becomes clear. This is one of the things that happens when you're doing concept art and concept design and you're really pulling ideas from thin air, right? You're pulling ideas that you're not already seeing in front of you that you're just drawing. You're actually generating the design as you draw. And so sometimes we sketch loose until we find something, right? Sometimes it might be in a happy accident. Sometimes it might be like, well, I kind of have like 60% of the idea in my head, but those finer details are coming out because as I draw, it becomes more clear to me. And I'd say that, 9 times out of 10, that is what is happening when you're concepting or, don't have the design done in front of you, is that you are drawing and seeing it with every mark that you make, it's become clearer and clearer. So sometimes you start to go in a direction and then that doesn't work. You're like, nope, back up. I like that other thing I was doing over there. And then sometimes it's as clear as a bell right from the beginning. You got to, just as a little suggestion, as someone that's, taught a lot of design and concept design courses, and have been dealing with creativity and idea generation for many years, is that if it's too clear in your head right away, you're probably pulling from memory. Probably. And while you may think that memory is serving you with originality, I don't know that it's always the case, because I think many times our recall, our memory is actually coming from things we've seen elsewhere. We feel like they're coming from inside of us, but it's like, what is a memory from something you've seen before, and when are you truly into new territory, right? And that's an interesting dichotomy there. When are you recalling something that you've consciously or maybe unconsciously are remembering, and when are you actually into new territory? But if you're a little bit uncomfortable, then it probably means you're in new territory. If you're kind of in a place where you're not sure, that's probably a good sign. Although many artists would probably tell you that they're uncomfortable when that's happening, but now you know you're into originality. Now you know you're into stuff that's your brain is uncertain where to go. So you have to have enough foundations. You have to have enough anatomy and enough study of the natural world that when it gets uncomfortable and when you're not sure where to go, you think back to natural law. What do we know works in gravity-based environments, with the natural world, with mammals, with reptiles, or whatever it is that you're working on? Where do we see some of those same principles at play, and how do they apply to the design that you're working on? But good stuff, though. I mean, that's the most fun part about doing design work is really being in that place where for a while you're not sure. For a while you might even be like, not sure here what I'm doing or where it's going. But then all of a sudden it does get clear, and you're like, yeah, that's where I'm going. That's where I am going with it. Okay, looking pretty good here. Digging it. By the way, the darker shadows generally are kind of following the line drawing, and vice versa. If I'm blocking something in with a darker value, that's a shadow. And where do we get the most dark marks or lines? If you're drawing them as shadows, you're gonna have line work somewhere around the edges of the shadows and the highlights, right? And if you ever take my classes, I talk about, where do we see texture? Where do we see detail? Where do we see the most surface, indication of surface and what's going on? Okay. That's right. You don't even know that it's memory. Exactly. That's the scary part. I have definitely had instances where I have worked on an idea that I could have swore I thought I was in my own territory. And then weeks later, months later, I'm like, oh, I think I subconsciously was pulling from this other place, from a memory, something else I saw. Now, it might have come out a little bit different with my addition to it or my changes to it, but you realize like how much of what we think about is truly, truly an original thought. Even though sometimes we may feel very alone in our heads, it's like how much is truly an original thought? And surprisingly, probably not as much as you think it is. But that's not to say we don't ever come up with original content. But I think iteration and variation and pushing it is how you're going to break through that. If you're settling with your first couple of ideas, chances are you're borrowing on memory, maybe a little too much. Okay. There was something else I was going to fix here. I was thinking to myself I wanted to fix something else. Just looking at the drawing now. Oh, yeah, I kind of remember now. Up here by the head, I've got some of this ear stuff. I kind of lost my ear a little bit. I don't like this line. This line's a little too strong there. There we go. That's this lobe in front. This might be a little far out too. So now I'm just perfecting some of this drawing. So I've got the edge of my eye here, which is kind of coming up. I don't want to connect that line. Little space in there. So now I'm going to try and work on my eyes to look a little more rounded. Working a little bit Let's zoom in here on this eye just a little bit. So this eye is looking a little bit more directly at us. So we have a little bit of these kind of eyebrow shapes coming in here. Here too. I think I'm going to bring this eyebrow down a little bit too. I think I'm going to turn my values off maybe for a minute. How you doing over there, buddy? We're doing good. Doing a little father-son duo today in the studio. Lighten up a little bit over. Okay, being careful not to get too close. What you got here, adventure? Let's see. I don't know. Running a dungeon, and then one of my players was like, wow, it's just like this one children's book. I just sat there for a second. Was like, oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, what is reality? What is a memory? I mean, sci-fi has played with this forever, right? Like, when are we into new territory, and when are we just really living out something that we've already seen before, you know? In some ways, I think memories, I've had this thought that, like, memories really give us comfort, right? Because they don't change for the most part, right? You remember it as it is, at least as long as you can remember it. And that gives us a sense of comfort to know that that place is always there. Sometimes it's a scary one probably too, but many times they're pleasurable or something we really associated with or found we liked. But then in some ways it's like we're just wanting to live that out again. And what how much of a dream was it? A dream? The classic, was that a dream? Wizard of Oz, all of it. Was that just a dream or was that reality? Like, where did the lines blur? But and in some ways, conceptually, that can help you too, because if you have something you've been exposed to through media, chances are so is your audience, right? And so those shared experiences and things that we've all seen before become a bridge, right? They're the language between the things we want to show people and take people on ideas that we have. And at the same time, we have to convince them to come with us. So memory and shared media experiences become like a language that we all can agree upon. And then from there, you get them to go, it's kind of like this. So think of this, come with me, right? You buy that, come with me. And then I'll show you how it's going to be a little different. So, in concept, we talk about this, the this idea that you're borrowing on shared language of your audience to get them to come on your journey with you. And then you kind of show them how it's going to be a little bit different. Because ultimately they want to be challenged with new stuff, right? They want to see new stuff too. But if it's too different and too weird to where you don't get buy-in, right? You don't get buy-in. They're like, nah, I don't agree with that. Yeah, go for it. So you got to get them to come on the journey with you, and a lot of times they won't even come on the journey with you if you're too too out there, too original. So it's tough because we want new, but if you truly show somebody something new, they're just like, I don't get this. What is this? How do I relate to this? So yeah, kind of tricky. All right, so right now I am just working on some lines that are making the drawing a little bit stronger. Really, I'm also looking to emphasize the form. And making sure that what overlaps, and so he's got a little bit of this kind of whisker stuff around his head here. So I think I have to clean this up a little bit. Go up a little bit in size. So this part is like the skull, and then this part is kind of more like, I think I'm going to lighten some of this edge. No, still need that. All right, this, not sure about this line here. I guess this would be like Maine. This is kind of like Maine, where it goes back into Just fixing this ear a little bit. And again, you know, I'm trying to get the feeling that there's the top of the ear. So you've kind of got the top. I don't know if you can see me because my cursor's pretty small here, but you know, this is this ear, right? And it's kind of off on that side of the head. And this is sort of on the other side. This is the ear over here as it's kind of curling up there. But I think I may need to, well, doesn't look very symmetrical, but that might be all right. This is more like fine tuning the drawing here. Kind of comes in here. This is the edge of the face. Okay, eyebrows. Tops of the ears. I'm going to extend this ear up a little bit farther. Too high. Kind of gets pointy towards the end. I'm up here by the creature's left ear top. That's the only thing I don't that I don't really like about streaming on the digital is that you can't really see where my hand is. When I'm doing this on my drafting table, then you can follow my hand and see where I'm at, but now you're just trying to find my cursor on the screen, and when I'm working small, that's pretty brutal. Okay. So I'm up here again, right here. I'm cleaning up these lines a bit. Okay, this is now getting sort of back of the head. This is just hair that's back here. Where does the head stop? And where is this back hair? Some of this is back hair, right? This stuff, this is back hair. Back fur. Okay. I think I need to curve this eye a little bit more. Now this is little textural stuff. I'm around the nose over here now, around the muzzle, kind of filling in some little textures. Maybe taking it a little bit away from the loose sketch line and breaking it up into, so it doesn't look too linear. A little more random. So little bits of texture here. I guess you could call this kind of like I'm texturizing. This is like a culinary term here. But this is where I'm giving a little bit more detail to the drawing, implying a little bit of the texture of the surface. All right. A Feeling pretty good. I like the shoulder better now. Back down here a little bit. Again, echoing a sense of the texture, but also defining the form at the same time. Just using the line, not the values. I'll get back to values here in a second. Now I'm being a little more mindful about the direction of the sketch lines here. A little more detailed. This side's closer, right? Around the beard over here, if you're following. The question here also becomes, what can I do with the values in general shading versus needing to do with the line? And I don't want to spend too much time on texturing with lines if the shadow's just going to cover it up. So I got to be a little careful. The textural lines do indicate form, shadow. So in some ways I can do it with the line also, but okay. Pretty good. This side, the creature's left side or our right side over here, I'm around the pectoralis down here, is slightly turned away, so I think the assumption here is that some of the detail might not be as strong over here. On the eyebrow now up here. Realize I'm kind of jumping around, but that's because I'm responding to what I feel needs a little bit more finesse, and I'm just jumping around. Okay. I think before I get into too much more detail here, I'm going to turn on this layer for a second. So just structurally reminding myself where I was at. So we got pectoralis, right, which is more or less coming here. It's deltoid back over there. So the clavicle is sort of what I was aiming in here a little bit. And again, kind of echoing a little bit over here. But he's hunched forward, so you're getting a little bit of that pocket of the clavicle. But I'm just sketching to kind of remind myself where the landmarks are. And then, of course, a little bit of the trapezius. So if I'm over here in this creature's right side, Hmm. Then I'm thinking clavicle is kind of here. Trapezius, which is kind of two sides. The back edge of it, which goes into the deltoid, but then I have this little kind of triangle in here. I've got the face main kind of coming out from behind the jaw there, but I got a few lines in here which are distracting. So I think I need to erase a few of these because they were misleading. Again, you do this with, you could do this with tissue or tracing paper if you're working in natural medium. Looks like we may be having a little stream health issue. Give me a second here. I don't know. Are we still on? Yeah, we are definitely having a little bit of stream health issues. Looks like we're back, though. No, we're not. Okay, maybe we're okay now. Little hiccup there. You guys still with me? We still going? Yeah, but we are kind of unstable right now. Well, let's give it a few minutes, see what happens here. Definitely seems like we're a little choppy. So, you guys okay? Is it making it? Give me a piece. Give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is one of the other disadvantages, I guess, of midday. It's weird. Stream Manager says I'm excellent, but yeah, OBS is kind of giving me the ups and downs here. So yeah, it's good. 1 second. Down the next. Well, seems like it's okay now. Little rocky patch there. All right, well maybe throw me a thumbs or something. It says we're still going, so I'll have to proceed like we are. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so I guess I'll just keep an eye on it and see what happens here. But I am definitely getting a little bit of stream health issues, but we'll see what happens. So, just again, looking at the face, looking for areas that look like they need a little cleanup in the drawing, because really from here, once I start finalizing the values, then we're gonna move on, and we're gonna start moving towards things like highlights and other things like that. So I think for me, I'm trying to just square away any anatomy that feels a little bit unresolved, and then we'll go back and finish up our values, and then maybe we get to some highlights. I was really hoping I would maybe squash this one in 2 sessions, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see. Okay, so again, talking structure here for a second. Clavicle, probably somewhere in this area. The other clavicle kind of moving up this way. Assuming it's sort of humanoid anatomy, bipedal anatomy. There'll be some clavicle stuff over there. Moving up towards the front. And again, covered with a lot of fur, so not really going to show bony landmarks, but maybe directional flow of the fur and shadows might really clarify where some of the anatomy is. I keep coming back to this head. I feel like I need to draw over the head here for a second. So here's our center line, which we talked about previously. All right, and we're kind of curved here. Ear rotating to the other side would sort of put us there. Edge of the eye sort of up, which means the ear is going to be somewhere right about in there. That seems to make sense. I think maybe it's here. So the ear is sort of starting behind here, and maybe we're getting a lot of that ear is turned around that back side. So I'm up here by the creature's right ear. Okay, that looks pretty good. Feeling pretty solid about that. Got a little J5 going in the headset here. Okay. Down around the muzzle. Getting some of the fur. Stream health looks like we're back. We're okay. Still rolling. Okay. I think I'll get off the face there for a little bit. Okay. What else do we do here? Oh yeah, let me turn off the anatomy stuff. A little suggestion of the clavicle there. Not too strong, just a little bit. All right, pretty good. Okay, looks pretty good to me. Let's go back to values. I think I've kind of got all this stuff noodled out. The head stuff sort of stops here. This is all back silhouette hair. We can fine tune some of that a little bit later. But I think we're ready to keep working on values. So here we go. Back in with values. We're sort of at the 20% range, so we start in with our lightest value, keeping an eye on some of our light sources. Actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I might do a little bit of erasing. I've got some highlight over here on the shoulder that would probably be here. All right, buddy. Got my co-pilot with me today. A bit on that tricep back there, and now maybe a little bit on the. I'm down here on the lower right arm. And I think maybe the side of the muzzle facing the light, kind of coming up a little bit. Definitely getting. It's looking good. All right, here we go. 10%. Now let's start thinking about that 10% again. I'm realizing a little of the 10% I think needs to come off of the shoulder here to give it more dimension. Looks pretty good. All right, 20%, going a little darker now. I'm now lightening up a few of these 20% areas, which you can see off and on here. Thinking about this mane going around the back. It's going to catch a little bit of light there. Back and forth. I'm kind of lightening certain areas of the 10%, like these eyebrows now. I'm up here. Because I want the eyebrows to actually kind of probably catch a little bit of highlight on there. All right, here we go. Now we're getting into some of the darker stuff. Working my way darker. And you can definitely see where some of my earlier dark marks were a little off target from the looseness of the sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and looking around the shoulder over here. I'm taking out some of these really dark marks where they just don't quite make sense. Many of them are okay, but some of the ones that are more obviously standing out. Looks pretty good, kind of going off and on. Again, that's one of the beauties of the digital technology, is just being able to, see stuff off and on and the effect of it. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of erasing, except as a technique for actually generating ideas. Sometimes you can use erasers. I actually prefer to draw with more. I'd rather draw something again than erase, but sometimes the takeaway process can be a fun one to experiment rather than always drawing with the addition. Looks pretty good. A little bit around the nose here. Not bad. Okay, now we're into the darks. Now this would be definitely shadows and cast shadows. And in this case, some of these shadow lines are pretty hard, so I'll probably end up softening them a little bit. So for instance, as I turn this on and off, I can see there's a few real hard edges down here by the edge of the face. So bring back how hard the brush is hitting, somewhere around 60%. Softening just a few of these edges. Just where it's too much. I don't want to feel the shadow being too hard unless it's actually a hard edge that should be landing there. Like a cast shadow with a hard edge might actually make sense, but that's feeling pretty good. Not bad. All right. Ooh, okay. Back to the 60% again. is this shadow taking away too much? Yeah, it's fattening up my line a lot. So I'm going to do this. See if I can... Do I need it? Maybe I don't need... Maybe the 60% I had was too dark. Maybe I don't need it now. Coffee. Okay. I don't know if I need that 60. Gotta be honest. It's a little heavy in a way that I'm not a big fan of. So I think I'm going to do some erasing. Where I think that the line might be a little too dark. Again, this is the luxury of fresh eyes, right? You come back, you look at this thing a couple of days later, hours later, and you realize, like, whoa, I was way, way too dark there. Just kind of checking values just to see how we're looking. I think that those darks were too dark. I'm finding most of this 60% is just not needed. Few key spots, but much less impact. Okay. Yeah, barely anything left here. This is just 60% you're seeing right now. Like darkest of darks. And there is really not much there. All right. Well, where do we go from here? So I think I need a little more shadow in certain places, maybe more like my 20%. 20% might do it. This is really giving it a lot of form here. So I'm wondering if somewhere between my 20. Okay. So let me grab. I come back in here with a little bit of 20%. Okay, needs a little bit of help with the form. And now I'm going to come in here with a brush that's a little bit softer. So this is going to, instead of just using a chunky brush, I'm going to use something with a little bit of a softer spread here. My shape dynamics is not. We could try that. We'll try it with pen pressure, but I'm going to try to beef up and soften at the same time a little bit of these shadows in here. So I'm going on to the 20. Sample. Okay. And you can see that the mark I'm making, let me zoom you in here. Before when I drew, and oftentimes when I start in, I'll go in with something really chunky and square because I don't want to be that careful. I think one of the keys when you're sketching is not to get too detailed too quick, right? Let it evolve. So I'm working chunky, loosely, sketchy. But I'm getting into the place where I now want to see the form come out a little bit more. So if you leave those chunky marks for shadows, then the forms are not going to be as clearly defined, right? So now I'm coming back in and I'm softening these edges. So you can see right in here where I've got some chunky edges from my initial pass on blocking in that percentage of shading there. But now I'm going to soften these edges. There you go. Just drag them out just a little bit so that the transition looks a little smoother, right? Edge of the peck there. If need be, I could actually come back on the 20%. Softer, a little softer, softer, softer. There we go. Softer in certain places. Little edge doesn't hurt either, but these silhouette back edges, you know, I'm just kind of softly putting in a little bit more of that. A la Bob Ross, the man himself. Gotta hand it to old Bob. He inspired me as a kid. For sure. Sorry he was... It's such a tough go of it sounds like. Okay. Better. Oh yeah, he's getting a little softer looking, a little softer feeling. What else we got to do here? Let's see, we were talking about maybe doing the 40 a little bit softer. Do these edges need to be a little softer? You want some chunk. I think some chunky shadows are good. You don't want everything to just be softy, airbrushy. It's too much. Yeah, we could hit that up. So let's do this. Let's go to the 40. Let's sample my 40 value. Test. Good. And just soften a few of these edges. Going with a big brush. Just down here by the pectoralis. A little soft. A little soft. Shadows need some definition, so don't overdo them, but I'm just softening a few places. Okay, let's go back. Good, good, good. Okay. Let's see what these ones look like. All right. Let's do the same with the 50. Just a few small critical areas. A little soft. A little soft. Boom. Just dusting it. Okay. A bit on the beard there. Okay. All right. Looking pretty good, pretty good. Okay. Where else? Where else did we go? I think I need a little 20% down here. Now I'm looking at the form now of the whole body, and I'm thinking, where do these pieces of anatomy need to turn a little bit? And I think I need a little more 20% around this rib cage, specifically on the far side here. The light is coming from above, so the tops of the shoulders, the clavicle, deltoids, the fur, they're all catching some of the light, but I think the rib cage, second row beneath the pectoralis here, could be a little more in shadow. So let's throw a little more 20% here. A little smaller. Maybe even a little 40. Let's check out the 40. There it is. Boom, sampling the 40. How you doing, bud? All right? All right. Okay. So what is the long game on this? Where are we headed with this? Well, I think ultimately we are holding out as long as possible before we start to move into highlights. I think that's really where it's at. It's all about wait for it, and just waiting for that last little bit until it's like, okay, release. And hit those highlights and go to town and have fun. But the highlights are really gonna pop, right? So I think that you need to wait as long as possible to do that. I'm almost wondering if I need to take my fur value, a lot darker. I think I may need to do a wash. This is without the local. This would be like the color of the fur, which really you could change to be just about anything if you want, as long as the values are in the right place. I think we're good. But I feel like there needs to be an overall general shadow darkening of the whole thing. So I am wondering if I could take this layer, let's duplicate it, and obviously it gets really dark. And I'm going to bring this above my value layers here. And I'm also going to desaturate this. So again, I want everything to categorically kind of go a little darker. So let's see. Let's do an adjustment to hue saturation, which you're all not seeing. I apologize. Maybe I could pull some of this stuff on screen for you. Kind of see what we're doing. So I have a hue adjustment here. Also realizing I might be a little off center. Sorry about that. But this is, I'm going to desaturate this. So it's really more like one of these warm neutral tones that we were working with. Let's do -50. Let's start there. Just to kind of darken the whole thing. Then we have the local. So the whole thing gets a lot dimmer and darker here. Darker still. Let's try. Well, let's try that. So we're going darker, then the local color, which is going to make it even darker. But I think that'll give us maybe more of a base to work off of. So let's come back on the local. Okay. Now I think one thing I could do on this fur copy, and let me make a copy. Ooh, too dark. Let's see if we can wipe out some of the highlights. So if you think about this, I'm throwing an overall wash over the whole thing just to knock it back a little bit darker here. And that's what we just did with this, because this is what it was before, right? With our local on there. But now we are throwing a sort of a we're duping it to create an overall wash of things to make things go a little bit darker. Yeah, but I don't want to lose it completely everywhere because I do still want some highlight. So I'm going to use nice soft highlight brush here to kind of take out a little bit of this second wash in certain areas, kind of lift it out, if you will. There you go. Just to give things a little bit more. I think I'm still hitting too hard, so I'm going to have it hit really soft at like 30% on the brush. So I'm up here in the brush controls now. And it's always better to, work slowly on the build-up than it is to, come in too hard. So it's like I'm kind of softly hitting the top of a little bit on the shoulder here, top of the pec. Top of the ear. Looks good. Just to give this thing a little more cast. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now, do I need more color? I could bring back in the local a little bit. Turn off values for just a second. Maybe go a little darker. Just a little doctoring. There we go. That's a little better. Edge of the mane there. Top of the head. Okay. These are just soft little sense of light landing here. Should I put some over here on the peck on this side? Okay. Yeah, it's almost like something kind of is putting some rays or some cast light on him like that, which looks pretty good. All right. I could beef this up a little heavier if I want to go darker. We could see how that works. I'm realizing maybe one more thing I may need to do here. What are we at time-wise? Okay. Coming up on the 2-hour mark, which I think for today is about all I'm going to have. So I have to start thinking about, for this session, what more I can do. I think we're definitely looking at going into a third session. I can tell you that one thing I'm not comfortable with right now is teeth and eyes, right? Teeth and eyes. So values are doing a lot here, which is good. We can adjust all these. If it's too dark, maybe we come up a little bit. But I think at this moment, before we do anything else, we got to work on some teeth. We got to get in here and look a little closer at anything unresolved, because before we really start finishing up with highlights and textures and little bits like that, we got to resolve some detail. And initial block-in didn't really take that into account, so I think we need to do that now. So I'm jumping back over to just good old pencil. much smaller. And I'm thinking about some detailing on these teeth. Now, I am not a wolf dentist, a coyote dentist, or a fox dentist. Um, so I'm going to have to, just take a little bit of a closer look. This is the beauty of the internet and things like that. And again, it is my own beastie, but we are kind of in this somewhat canine world, that it feels like, at least. So, what do we do? You know, how do we handle the teeth? So it seems that some of this is going to be a matter of erasing a little bit to get some edges that I need. So we'll go back to, just go with something kind of small to erase with at this point. But I've got some edges of my initial pass on the teeth. I definitely need a little bit of, hope you're all doing well out there. How's everybody doing? Everybody working on their stuff with me? Okay. Let's take a look at some references. What do we got in here? Teeth. Some snarl. We need some snarl teeth. All right, so we got our canines, for sure. So I'm going to thin out my line art just a little bit here. Again, this is all some of the initial land, so some of these lines were pretty rough when they first went in. One thing that it kind of seems here is that, you know, um, if we're looking at foxes and coyotes and wolves and things like that, it seems like these creatures have kind of a heavier gum line, right? So I think that this wouldn't be necessarily all teeth. I think we're going to be looking at kind of the feeling of a gum line. And I don't think I necessarily have to get all the detail towards the back. I think somewhere back in here it gets a little bit Now there might be kind of just some shapes. But in the front, where you're really seeing these snarling ones kind of happen, and I think we gotta get these ones a little tighter. So sense of a gum line. It seems like they generally have, look at a couple different photos here, but there's kind of a darker gum line. So it seems like on animals like this that their gum line is pink, but right where the tooth hits the tissue, the gum gets pretty black, and I don't know why that is actually. I wonder if it's because they just don't brush their teeth, kind of a thing, or if it's a blood flow thing. Interesting. I wonder what a veterinarian dentist would say, because I know dogs are kind of the same way. They have this dark gum line, or not. Is it bacterial? Is it blood flow? Why is it that those... So I'm getting a little softer in here. I don't know if you can see this. I'm getting really close now. But I'm leaving a lot of this to the mind's eye to kind of fill in some of those gaps. Just a suggestion of those gums. And then there's also just, kind of making art. Nothing is still sort of expressive mark making, right? Again, always good to zoom out because you don't necessarily know how that feels from a distance. How do those teeth read? Might be putting too much detail. Okay. I'll go back in for the close-up here. A little bit of cleanup on that initial pass. Thinning out some of these lines. Okay. Not bad, not bad. Definitely more detail than we had before. Let me head back to this for a level. Sorry, sampling. Had to get my color right. There we go. So again, working in a little more detail. Around the teeth. This is my sort of... I did a layer to knock the whiteness back. Because I didn't want those teeth to be that solar white. Looks pretty good. Not bad, not bad. Okay. Back to fur. And I think we're almost there. Drawing line. A little bit of cleanup on the teeth here at the top. Again, being careful, because if you spend too much detailing time in here, then all of a sudden it doesn't feel like it goes with the rest of the drawing. There's a line weight that's happening on a larger scale that wouldn't make sense. That looks pretty good. Not bad. Oop. Okay. Pretty good. Definitely more resolved. Values. Okay, so let's see how the mouth is going here. So this is where maybe some of that gradient stuff that we were doing on the values to start would help. But it looks like I got some areas where my shadows have maybe overstepped their bounds a little bit onto the teeth. I don't know how terribly exciting this part is. This is, again, one of the reasons why, you know, getting into stuff like this can be slow. It can be slow for sure. And I apologize if it isn't the most exciting. Okay, let's move up to the eyes. I think, well, all right, hold on. Boom. 50. All right. My darkest shadow here. I'm going to soften a little bit of the mouth. And maybe we need to even go a little darker inside the mouth there. So I'll go to the drawing level. Switch brush. Something really big and soft. Just kind of transitioning out of the mouth there. Okay, better. A little more dimension to the mouth. Good. Okay, over to the eyes. The eyes do it all. Where are we at? Let's check in. Everybody still with me? Looks like we're still rolling. Stream health is good. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. Had fun hanging out. I hope you got some work done too. I think we're going to wind this one down here. We'll probably end up getting into highlights a lot more. Do a quick file save. Always good when you're working digitally. Boom. What else would I do with this? All right, so let's work on these eyes a little bit. So we got a little bit of drawing that needs to touch up. I think we'll finish with the eyes today and get things a little bit refined. I think at the moment we've got a little bit of too much stuff. So I got to do a little bit of anatomy touch up here. I want to round them up just a little bit more. Too much shadow, too heavy a line will only flatten things out. So we're wanting the eye to look as dimensional as possible. So I need more thick to thin lines going on in here. Got little reflections going on, so I'm going to try to knock out some areas where I think the eyes I may end up I'm going to take out some of the local, that loose painted local that got put into the eyes here. While they might be kind of brown, I think I'm going to go for more of the classic yellowish, as most somewhat sinister beasties seem to have. But the local color that I had originally put down is coming through a little too strong. You could do the icy blue, but this is not really like a cold weather beastie. So I think I'm going to go with something a little more along the yellowish lines. So let's see. Creating some new color passes. Let's start with something kind of gold, yellowish gold. Just to see where this is. One sec. All right, finishing up here. Let me check on these eyes, which of the values is really impeding on my eyes there a lot. No, nothing yet. Is it the 50? Ah, it's the 50. All right, looks like it's the 50. So I'm going to go to the 50 layer, one of my value layers, and I'm going to knock out a little bit of these shadows because there is some real dark values that are really knocking back my color. Okay, and let's see. All right. Some of this I can handle, by the way, when we get into the highlights and we get into the details. But for now, holding off as long as possible. Let's a couple more erasings, and then we'll just to lighten some of these heavier lines. They just got, they went down loose. They went down sketchy with the initial concept. So it was sort of, you weren't necessarily thinking about rendering. And this is, again, we're moving towards rendering. We're moving towards making those really finessing details. And I'll get there. But little bits at a time. Okay. A little layer management here. And just a little bit of touch up on some line art. Just thinning a few lines out here while I'm up here. Sorry, I'm up in the eyebrows. Just thinning a few lines out. Realize, the line weights of them was a little chunky. Also realizing, little things like nostrils may need a little bit of darkening. All right. All right, folks. I think for today, we've really kind of wrapped here, done a lot of finessing and fine tuning. I thought maybe we'd get into some highlights a little bit more today, but I think we're just hanging on there a little bit longer. And I think the payoff will be better because again, once you get into highlights, there's a lot you can do, and it's a different avenue. But I think that the more work you can get done in the values and in the initial passes, that's only going to make your highlights and texture work faster. You're being more efficient and won't get caught up in too much detail there. So the head's looking better, more dimensional. Definitely like what's going on here. And some of this, again, will be finessed in little textural layers, maybe a little bit better. But I think for this session, which was a little bit of a cleanup and fix fresh eyes kind of session, then we'll really be able to hit it a lot more next time. I'm going to darken a little bit of this gum line. Because again, what we know about a lot of animals is they tend to get a thicker kind of black gum line like this. Not exactly sure why, but maybe that's something research can tell us why that happens. Like I've seen it in lions and tigers, right? That gum line gets. Okay. Not bad. All right, let's look at that final value pass as well. Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably got to knock those teeth back a little bit. Because they're pretty glowy. Got one layer of value here, which needs a little bit of erasing here. Is it drawing layer? Ah, there it is. Hmm. Sorry, I was just noticing a little bit of these duplicated layers. The duplicated layers, with it came some of those shadows, which I had to perfect. Okay, so eyes are getting there. A bit better, got some reflections. Could probably bring out the gold a little bit more. Let's see. A little bit with teeth. We need a little to knock those back. So maybe we do this. Let's double up on the teeth. And let's maybe do it again. We'll call this the teeth group. Do a quick file save. Well, I hope you got some work done. Did you guys keep up with me today? Yeah, we're definitely going to revisit this, I think, one more time. I want to throw a look. There's one more thing I just got to do. I just got to do this because it's annoying me. I can deal with a lot of the rest next time, highlights, that kind of stuff. But I think, I had a tongue color here. Okay, there it is. Can you see that? Yeah. Maybe we dupe the tongue. So there's some tongue in there. We'll call that the tongue group. So it's just threw a little bit of redness in there. And I think I need to give a little bit of pink to that gum line. Just a little bit. Just so we know it's kind of the real fleshy color. So let's see. I'll go above teeth here, create another little layer. Start with something kind of in the reddish category. Move up to something very gum-like. Let's see what this looks like. And again, probably multiply. Let's go back to gums. Let's paint ourselves a little bit of gum color in there as well. Again, I could probably get into some of the details later, but for the moment it just implies that there's something there. Okay. It's pretty good. Let me document my gum color. There we go. So I've got my colors picked out here. Eventually, probably clean those up. Won't be part of the final art, but we've definitely come a long way here.